We looked at moving into a caravan and renting our home out for $350 a week, which of course is $18,000 a year, which we wouldn't have had at the time. So $18,000 would be a massive amount of money for us to suddenly have extra income if we lived in a caravan.
This is Property Investory, where we talk to successful property investors, find out more about their stories, mindset and strategy. I'm Tyron Shum, and in this episode, we're talking to 2010 Property Investor of the Year, Prue Muirhead, who at 19 began her property investing journey off the back of a career as a DJ. Now, she's the owner of Muirhead Property Management and currently has 18 investment properties in her portfolio. All it took was a sign to give Muirhead a tilt towards the right path. We'll hear about how she turned from DJ into a property investor and businesswoman, and how property investing is like playing a game Monopoly.
Probably normally it would be gym in the morning. I obviously respond to emails and phone calls then. I'm always on realestate.com. It's probably like everyone else that's listening to you, on and off realestate.com, domain.com and all your search engines. Daily I have lunch with my husband because we do work together in the property management business. I do spend a great deal of time with my kids. I love watching them play sports, so that's whenever that's on. And family meal at night. And it's a pretty great life, really. And like I said, it's a lot different to what it was 10 years ago when we were under lots of pressure and I had this DJ business and no income, and it wasn't a good time. So I'm so pleased to be in a different era of my life. It's all about having freedom to see the kids, to be honest with you, because I made a couple of errors early in life. I gave birth to two beautiful children and went back to work the day I gave birth to them. I probably have felt guilt for that my entire life until I recognised it when they were 8 and 10. And thankfully we got into property, or I got into property by then. So I just went, this is ridiculous. I'm making more money in capital growth of just 2 properties than going to work full time for myself. And so thankfully I flipped it on itself and sold the business for equipment value only and travelled the country for a couple of years. So yeah, I know, it's funny, but I think life's for learning. And I certainly had a big lesson there.
Starting off with nothing, Muirhead dramatically turned her life around. Since then, she has accumulated 18 investment properties and began the property management business with her husband.
I'm a part-time lecturer at for property investing at TAFE SA, and 3 years ago I started a business called Muirhead Property Management in Adelaide. So that's pretty much my background. But as far as bragging, I guess most people find me most interesting because I was a disc jockey for 15 years, had an incredibly low combined income with my husband. We had no super, nothing set up for our future. And in 2002, we went to buy our very first investment property and was told by Westpac we couldn't even afford our own home. By 2006, I purchased our very first investment property, and in 2010, 4 years later, I actually won your Investment Properties Property Investor of the Year, which is a fantastic magazine. And of course, I won that with 14 positive geared properties, and 2010 and 12 travelled Australia, homeschooling our kids in a caravan. And then, of course, like I said, 2014 started Muirhead Property Management, and I currently own 18 positive geared properties. So life's a lot different to what it was 10 years ago.
When it comes to investing in property, she describes herself as a calculated risk taker.
Property is actually a bit of a hobby for me. It's a bit like a game of Monopoly. I certainly take calculated risks. So I don't know whether you'd call me a risk taker. I know other people perhaps would find it hard to jump at some of the investments that I've bought, but I've never really been a normal investor, and I've been chasing the income. So I've always been chasing the positive geared properties rather than negative geared, because I've never had the income to write off the depreciations or any of the expenses that go with property. So I've had to have them positive geared to put money in my pocket, not take money out. So, but I'd say I'm a calculated risk property investor.
With a steady interest in music while growing up, she naturally turned to DJing as a primary source of income. However, on discovering that the risks outweighed the gains within that industry, she eventually turned to property investing.
So I was born in Pinaroo, which is virtually on the border of South Australia and Victoria. Moved to Adelaide, didn't even finish year 12, did year 11. I worked for a furniture removalist company for 7 years, And then, like I said, I was a disc jockey for 15 years, so I always wanted to make my living on my saxophone. And when I left school, I thought, well, I'll try and get into the police band. And I had open heart surgery as a teenager, so they said to me at that stage I was a risk. So DJing became something. I thought, I reckon I could make some money in DJing. So I did that for 15 years, and by the time I grew this business to 26 staff, it was ridiculously expensive business. I mean, we had to make our living one night of the week, 6 months per year when the sun shines on a Saturday. Really, really tough industry to be in. And because we were carrying, or I was carrying full-time staff, road crew, as well as, all the DJs. So you need all the guys working as well as myself in the summer months, and then you're trying to keep them for winter and there's no work. So it was a really interesting time. So needless to say that now I'm in business, I will not have staff again because they're lovely. I'm sure they're lovely people and there's some fantastic ones out there, but the stories are crazy. But it blew me away when I did win Property Investor of the Year in 2010 because, to be honest with you, all I was trying to do was make a better life. Well, I guess that I used to hook up a trailer, a lot of wedding and corporate events. I did do a couple of school formals, but I was in my early 20s and decided that teenagers didn't expect to see some 20-year-old female standing up there, so I used to put my guys into those. But when it came to weddings and corporate events, I used to hook up my trailer with all of my speakers, PA gear, karaoke machines, whatever the client wanted. I'd go down to, I was in Adelaide, so I'd go down to we're probably by the time I sold the business, we're in nearly every 5-star venue in Adelaide with our staff. I'd just turn up, set up about an hour or two before all the PA gear. And then when all the guests had arrived, I'd introduce, say if it was a wedding, I'd introduce the bridal party, I'd MC, master of ceremonies, I'd take control of that as well as all the music, and it was really good. I did enjoy that. It was lots of fun. I guess it goes down the same line as my saxophone. I was in a band when I was younger with my brothers, and it was fantastic fun. So it was on that same line, but there is a due date, and unfortunately I think it should be a second income, not your main source of income, and that's what I learnt. But at the end of the day, I'm exactly what people would expect me to do. I was playing all the music for everyone. I'd stop the music and I'd play with the guests. I'd get them to do aerobics, congas, zorbas, teach them dances, all sorts of crazy things. And then I'd come home by about 2 o'clock in the morning with my trailer on after I'd unpacked all the gear in my black suit and try and go to bed straight away, which is virtually impossible because you're always hyped up after a function. But it was good. It was good for the time. But I did do that for 15 years. We're on a far less than average income, far, far, far less than average income. And thankfully it took a conversation over the Sunday Mail once, and I said to Andy, if you had your life again, what would you change? And he said, I would have got a trade. And I said, honey, you're 37, you go off and get your trade. I mean, it was my business anyway. He joined me halfway through, so I sort of just thought, well, this is ridiculous. I'm making more money in capital growth from just 2 properties at that time we had. Than running this business and working myself to the bone. So thankfully I was, it took 12 months, but we sold it for equipment value. So it certainly didn't set us up. It just paid off all of our debts pretty much for the business. But, if I didn't take the risk in being a DJ and having that business, I might have found that I'd be working for a good income and I didn't have my back against the wall. It's when your back's against the wall and you don't have the income that you have to think of other ways around this. What am I going to do? This isn't working. Whereas I think people sometimes when they're in a comfortable world find it too easy to just sit on their hands and do nothing, whereas I had to do something.
Muirhead's parents had an unintentional impact on her while she was young.
No, I've always been a really good saver. I can live really frugally, and I sort of always have, but I've just always been a really good saver, and I don't know what it is. But my parents were real estate agents, so I guess that's the backbone to it, but it used to drive me crazy. They used to talk about real estate around the dining table, and I used to hate it. So I think somehow that information did sink in. But they used to sell real estate, but in their sidelines, they used to buy blocks of units and put them on separate titles. That was sort of back in the 70s when most blocks of units were all on one title. So you could buy a block of units for a lot less than, so if you buy a block of 4 units, you'd buy them, if all of them were, if you times the units, say 200,000, if you had 4 of them, you'd think it'd be worth 800,000. But if they're on one title, you could actually buy them for, say, 600, 500. because, of course, less people can afford a $500,000 transaction than a $200,000. Does that make sense, what I've just said? English is not my my forte. But anyway, so they used to buy blocks of units, and in the end, they both retired at 47. But as a child, no, I used to hate them talking about real estate, but I think I certainly have, as much as I've ended up in a kind of real estate way, I vowed and declared I'd never be a real estate salesperson, and I have never done that. We just do property management now, thankfully. But as far as they're concerned, they probably were a massive influence without realising it at the time.
If you've ever gone through a difficult period in your life, turned on the radio and it had a sign that pointed you in the right direction, Muirhead can relate. That was how her property investing journey began.
We were in an incredibly low income. We had no superannuation at all. And I recognised something had to change. We'd end up with virtually nothing. And then in 2002, we went to buy our very first investment property, and Westpac said, as I mentioned, that we couldn't even afford our own home. So we had 1 month to work out what on earth we were going to do. So there we were, about to hopefully buy our very first investment property, to be told you can't even keep your own home that you're living in, principal place of residence. So we had like 1 month to work out what we were going to be doing. So we looked at moving into a caravan and renting our home out for $350 a week, which of course is $18,000 a year, which we wouldn't have had at the time. So $18,000 would be a massive amount of money for us to suddenly have extra income if we lived in a caravan. So to be honest with you, that's pretty much how the investing journey started. So like magic, there was this radio advert on about a week later, and it said, if you're having trouble loaning money, call us. And so I called them, and of course, the rest is pretty much history. They were selling, and back then it was quite easy to get low doc loans, low documentation loans, where you sign a piece of paper to say, yep, I earned $200,000, and it's a bit naughty, but I think it probably was $200,000 I wrote down, but I think at the time we were earning probably 20, combined. It was ridiculously low. So that's why 18 for renting our own home was going to be good. And so I remember Andy and I signed this document to say we're earning $200,000. So they gave us the equity out of our own home, because we'd bought our own home at that stage, we'd been in the same house for about 10, 15 years. So we'd bought it for about $140,000 at the time. And at that stage, it was worth about $350,000. So they gave us $100,000 or $150,000 in a line of credit. And with that, we were able to pay the loan off itself, off the home we were living in, as well as putting a deposit on an investment property. So the actual line of credit, really all I was doing was trying to keep up the repayments. So just like any home repayments, because we didn't have the income coming in, I ultimately was using the lender to pay back the lender, if that makes sense. So I was going further into debt to pay back the lender to hold the house, knowing that our principal place of residence was going up at about a rate of about 7% per year. So each year that house was going to be, $15,000 to $20,000 more expensive compound, So I knew that if I could just hold on to everything, that in the long run it'd be okay.
Her first investment property was purchased on her home turf, as many other investors are known to do. Taking a calculated risk, she realised this long-term investment would pay off.
The first investment property is quite an interesting one. I think we all like to buy close to home, and I'm no different. So the first one we bought was just, the next suburb on from us. And it was a little 2-bed house, and I remember it was on the market for $220,000. And at the time, the median house price in that area was probably about $280,000. Although this was a 2-bedroom, it was fair enough. It should be well under median house price because it was smaller. And it was renting for about $220 a week, which is pretty standard 5% returns in Adelaide. Then I remember working out if I added the returns of 5% plus the fact it would go up in capital growth about 7%, that 7% plus 5% equals 12% per year, that I was better off to own that than not. So that's kind of where life sort of did a bit of a turnaround at that point, because I knew even though it was taking money out of my pocket to buy that investment property, in the long run, it was going to be a much better option.
Coming to her worst investing moments, it is clear that adversity has aided Muirhead and helped her learn important lessons.
I'm assuming you're talking about the moment in 2002 when Westpac said we couldn't even afford our own home. That was pretty much the worst investment moment. And that was our principal place of residence. And we even spent our kids' piggy bank. I think they both had about $500. They were 2 and 4, by the way, so they were young. And they had, over their birthdays and Christmases, grandparents, whomever gives them cash every so often. So they didn't spend it at 2 and 4. So we spent it and bought, just food. It was just a horrible, horrible time. And thankfully things did change when I heard that advertisement. But my second personal worst moment would be going back to work, to my full-time DJ business the day I gave birth to my kids. I'll never forgive myself, hence why we travelled Australia when our finances had changed in 2010, 11 and 12. So it was pretty cool. But I think, sadly, those worst moments led us to where we are today. So, I don't know, do things happen for a reason? Maybe they do.
Everything clicked for her while lying awake in bed one night.
So the DJ business, we purchased a bottom-end property, a commercial property in Adelaide, in the Adelaide CBD to run the business from. And it was an interesting time. I mean, I think outside the square, and I guess if you knew my portfolio, you probably worked it out that nothing's the same in what we own. But this particular one was a commercial building, and the neighbouring company, it was David and Goliath, their property was about 45 times bigger than ours, to give you some sort of scope on this. And they wanted us to sign over a right-of-way that we didn't need. So we could still access the back of our property through one half of the right-of-way. The second half of the right-of-way went through their property. And they were bullying us pretty much, wanting us to sign over this right-of-way. And thankfully, they came in one day when Andy was in the office in the commercial building and pretty much tried to get him to sign something. And thankfully, he didn't, right? So what happened? So then we sort of went into negotiation, and I said, well, give us money. Because we didn't have any, obviously. So I'm thinking, well, if you're going to do something, it's on our title, give us money. They wouldn't give us money. And they were a car dealer, and so we said, well, give us a car. And they wouldn't. And then by this time, we'd already spent $3,500 on a solicitor. And it was just ridiculous. $3,500 to us was a massive amount because we just didn't have that sort of cash. And we knew that they could keep talking to us and it would just fold. So we stopped talking to them, and they came back about 2 years later and they said, they're going to build a wall on it and then make us sue them and all this. It got really nasty. And I remember one night in bed, I went, oh my God, land. They want us to sign over some land, which is right of way because they were going to build over it. They want us to sign over this land. Well, why don't they give us land? Because they're 47 times bigger than we are. They could give us land. They hadn't built the development, the 4-story building yet. And so we went to a solicitor and said, look, what do we do here? We don't want to pay your fee. And they said, that's okay. What we'll do, we'll go to them and say, if you want to talk to the Muirheads, which of course is my surname, and in my surname, and if you want to talk to the Muirheads, you've got to pay my fee. So this big company said, okay, well, we'll pay your solicitor's fee. So the second time round, they were paying our solicitor's fee. So we had sort of had nothing to lose. And of course, the solicitor said, what do you want now? I said, well, ask them if they'll give us land. And they came back and said yes. So we gained land on our title, another almost half, about 40% larger. Our land was 40% larger, and then 2 years later sold as a development site in the city, Adelaide CBD. So it was a really, really bizarre. It was just like, oh my God, they're not going to give us anything, and we were like a stalemate. And it could have been really nasty, but we ended up with, I don't know, they probably gave us about $150,000 to $200,000 worth of land.
A mother first, a property investor, and businesswoman second, Muirhead says that time is her most important asset.
Oh, they're 18 and 16. Really good. I don't know. My son plays, they're both volleyball players. So my daughter plays league and she's played for Australia 6 times and captained the country as a junior, and she's really a bit of a gun. And my son plays volleyball for the state. And I don't know, I just love my kids. Yep, just love them. But I think I'm no different to any other mum. Like I know some people, maybe one of your questions may have been, what's the end goal? There kind of isn't one for me. Mine has always been to just have time, just have time with the kids, and property just happens to be there and happens to be my hobby. But I do, in saying that, it is on my bucket list to do a development. It is quite important to me, as well as getting back in a caravan and travelling Australia with Andy. I won't be able to take the kids, they'll be too old. I would like to develop something because everything we've done so far has been like buy, renovate and hold, or buy, hold and put on separate titles, hold. Like it's been a lot of that, whereas I've never done a development other than built our own home. So we're on the same block, that same house we're going to rent out for $350 a week. We still live on that block in a new home, which we moved into 12 months ago. But so I've never done any developments, where you knock a house down and build 2 or 3. I don't believe there's money in going from 1 to 2. I need to buy a house where I go from 1 to 3.
Hey, let's be real. Deals that can yield 20 to 30% per annum do exist. Don't believe me? Well, here's a story about property development I invested in Victoria. This developer had the project fully funded beforehand, but he and his family suffered a loss, a circumstance that led him to be unable to proceed with the development. So I stepped in, and in 2 weeks we funded the shortfall, allowing for the development to continue. 5 months later, the development was refinanced and we received our funds back with interest. Yes, there are amazing opportunities in the property market like this one. So, do you want to get a better return with low risk on your money? Then register your interest by visiting propertyinvestory.com. We start off with finding out what held her back from investing into property in the beginning.
At all time, it's finance, because if I can get my hands on money at any time, I can buy something that's positive geared, that puts money in my pocket, rather than takes it out. So it actually buys me more time. It gets me out of a job, not into one, if that makes sense. So finance has probably been the only thing that's held me back along the way, and that's because our income has been so minimal. It depends where I'm at the time. So it's a really interesting time. So I did, when there was a time where Andy and I both were travelling Australia, and we were lucky enough to be offered to run a resort in Brighton, Victoria, a beautiful, beautiful, magnificent country town at the bottom of the ski fields of Hotham and Falls Creek. And so we're running this timeshare resort as the managers. And as soon as we got the job, I went straight back to our mortgage broker and said, right, I want money out of everything. And then there was another time where I took a job for a week, like I said in the previous time we spoke. I took a job for a week to get a loan over the line as well. And of course, before that, it was low doc loan, so I could sign a piece of paper. I don't really like selling anything, so I'd prefer not to sell a property to create cash flow to, money in my pocket to buy something else. I prefer not to do that. If I can avoid it, I tend to try and use the equity in each property as a little bank to revisit.
Furthermore, I guess now that you've got your own business here, that you can actually use that to leverage and apply for more loans as well.
Interesting enough, you need about 2 years of income, and we've been trading for 3, so we're just at that point again to go again, which is just exciting for me. Very exciting for me. So it's not quite as easy as just getting into a business, unfortunately, because you need 2 years of taxable, reasonable taxable income, but it's good. But I do always have a line of credit there, so there's certain amount of things I can do without too much stress.
In Muirhead's property investing journey, her one mentor had a positive impact in shaping her mindset.
Other than books, my dad, he's a lifetime of wiseness. I call him a Trevism. His name's Trevor. So he's kind of like someone that I bounce things off. And, half the time he doesn't know the answer, but what it does give you is confidence in what you're thinking. I think that's probably it. So Dad's always been a positive mentor for me, without question. So the difference was that he made, back then he used to save up X amount of dollars, and he used to save up the cash because he was doing well in life, which is great, which I'm the opposite. I wasn't. I had to do it a different way. He used to save up a third of the value of the home because he believed a third of the value of rent would cover repayment. So he used to save up a third and then buy a block of units and buy another third. He never used to go and revisit properties, capital growth to get equity out. He just did it, third of the value of the home. He'd just save it. So we certainly had similar end goals, but at the beginning it was very different.
She believes that this difference in housing prices has had an effect on the way people save and draw equity when it comes to investing into property.
And in fact, even in the 10 or 11 years I've been investing, things have changed as well. Like land tax changed throughout my investment journey too. So I had to change the way I did things myself. So it's been interesting. And now if the lenders change, because I know there's a lot of talk about different variations going to happen with lending now, as soon as that happens, I'll just have to change my tact. You just have to be on the edge of it, I think. You have to sort of be aware of what's going on around you. And so I certainly have to go in different directions depending on what is going on at any one time with the government or with our finances. Little Adelaide, like we haven't got the $1 million sure we have, but they're not investment properties. But you can buy a house in Adelaide for under $300,000 and get $300 a week rent for it, and that will be 15, 20 minutes outside of Adelaide CBD. Sadly, Adelaide's like the hare and the tortoise. We're like the tortoise. We go slow and steady, but we're always there. We've always got tenants, and the returns are about 5 or 6% here, and it just so it's really tough when the federal government bring in all these things, because of course other states in Australia have just been booming ahead, and we're stuck in our median house price. I think it's $450 or $480 or something in South Australia.
I think the time will come, because obviously history's shown that it has gone up so much as well. I mean, as you've mentioned, your house doubled over a period of time, so it's a matter of time. I think it is.
You're right, and that house now would be worth about $900,000 that we bought for $147,000. But we did put a new house on it, so we have sort of knocked one down and built a new one.
Some of the best advice she has ever received has been drawn from books such as Kiyosaki's Cash Flow Quadrant.
There was a pivotal moment where I read a book, and I don't remember what the book was called. Everyone asked me, but it was where you buy one house a year for 10 years. You sit until you're ready to retire. So say that's year 11 to 20, and then you sell off a portion of your property to pay off the debt of the others and live off the rent of the remaining 5, 6, 4, however many it would be. And when I read that, I went, one house a year for 10 years, I reckon I could do that. And that's really how the whole thing was. So that was a light bulb moment, that one, as well as reading Robert Kiyosaki's Cash Flow Quadrant. That was the one a friend of mine happened to be given for their birthday. They left at the bottom of their bag. It got completely wet, and they said to me one day, you might be interested to read this, and handed it to me.
Oh, that's very nice of her.
They didn't realise how much that was going to make a difference, because I certainly read that one before I read the one house a year for 10 years. And because that's quite simple to do, one house a year for 10 years. I know that sounds hard, but like some of the houses we own are $100,000. That's all it costs us. So it's not like you have to buy something that's huge. And the other really interesting thing is that because we're not buying the top end properties, we're sort of sticking in the lower end. When the market's rents drop, it's the top end that drops. We're kind of waiting at the bottom, sitting at the bottom. It doesn't really affect us.
Delving more into the nuts and bolts of her strategy, Muirhead treats each property like a bank.
I've just used each property as a bank, so I just don't sell them to not pay capital gains tax. I buy positive geared properties, so that obviously puts money into my pocket, not out of it, so it gets me out of a 9-to-5 job, not ties me to one. And of course, I just was doing the buy one house a year for 10 years. So I think when it really comes down to it, that's the basis of everything. I'm just trying to chase something that's neutral to positive geared, because even if it's neutral today, it'll be positive geared tomorrow, because your repayments are still going to continue to be the same. Your rents are going to go up over time, and generally speaking, the actual value of the property will go up as well.
When considering which properties to add to her portfolio, Muirhead has certain things that she looks for.
Obviously, I'm looking for positive gears. I'm looking for I want to buy something that's under median house price for the area. that makes sense because there's an opportunity for you to add value. Unlike with shares where you're basically buying a share for the price it is today and you can't add value to that. I usually buy a house for two reasons. So it'll be that the property needs a bit of a renovation. It's well under market. It could be a student accommodation, or it could be I could subdivide the block, or I need to buy it for two reasons. So even though I'm going to hold on to it, I know that if one reason doesn't work out for me, the other one's fine. I once read a little bit, I think it was Margaret Lomas mentioned, and she's so right. If you go to the country, we don't have many in the country, and they are certainly the ones that are underperforming compared to the city properties we have. But the country ones is, if you go to a country town, you really want to make sure that there's at least 25,000 people living in that town and at least two reasons for that town to survive. And that makes absolute sense too. It's just logic. Sometimes you just need to be hit with the logic to go, yeah, fair enough, And so I think that's pretty much what I do. And seriously, it is a boring strategy by renovate and hold. I do tend to renovate, less curtain and carpet for most properties. Usually get more money. Every property we have, we allow pets because I know we'll get an extra $10 to $20 a week rent. 70% of the rental market have pets, so it's free money for us. Some owners will not let pets, but no way, not us. I think there's a pile of little things that I can't even put my finger on that I just naturally do. But buying under the median house price is absolute forte because you don't want to pay too much. You don't want to overcapitalise in an area. You want to have the opportunity to add value. So that would be number one anyway.
When looking for the right tenants for her investment properties, they have to get approval from her husband.
Usually, tenant-wise, I guess we want to make sure that they are earning 3 times the household income as the rent. So if the rent was $100, we want to know that the couple are earning $300 a week to live. Or if it's $800 a week for rent, we want to know they're earning, $2,400 a week, which is just over $100,000 a year combined income, so they can afford it. That's probably number one. We're probably like most other property managers other than that, is that we've got to make sure that they've preferably got a history. In South Australia, we can't ask anybody to pay more than 2 weeks rent in advance. But there are certainly times where people offer more than 2 if they've got some sort of a problem with their rental arrears or something. But yeah, I hold the hand of because of course I love property big time. I used to mentor, but I found that a little bit frustrating. People didn't jump because it's more of a mindset than an ability. And so as much as I can help them, I was able to help them find properties or give them ideas and strategies, it really was up to them to do it. And so in our property management business, I hold the hand of all the people that we manage. So that's nice. So when they're trying to build their portfolio, they always lean on me, and I'm always like, yes, always do it. But as far as, and of course the tenants must meet my husband when it comes down to it, looking for tenants, because he's an ex-policeman, so he was in the police force when he was younger as well. So
that's quite handy to have.
Yeah, I don't deal with the tenants. I'm a little bit too nice. I deal with the owners and and their property and how to get the better returns. E.g., allow pets. Please allow pets is the biggest thing here. And of course, if they can put up a stud wall and make a 4th bedroom and those sorts of ways, they'll they make 100% returns in the money. It's just a no-brainer. There's some other stuff that I love doing, which I do for myself. So I just pass on whatever wisdom I have to them, and they go, "Whoa, really?" So that's always nice.
Committed and proactive thinking has led Muirhead to succeed with her investment properties.
I'm not a sheep. I tend to say, I never sort of say to myself, can I do this? It's how can I do this? So I'm sort of already committing to the process. I just have to work out how to get to the end goal. Whereas a lot of people talk themselves out of something because it's too risky or it's not like everyone else is doing, and they listen to families and friends. I stopped listening to family and friends a while ago because it's not good to listen to someone that hasn't walked the walk, as you would be aware. But I do tend to think outside the box. So that's the really good example of that is the one in the Adelaide CBD with the right-of-way. Another good example of that is rather than having the hassle of student accommodation, I just split this house into two. And I didn't know how I was going to do it. I didn't know how the power was going to work. I didn't know how the water was going to work. I didn't know if I was even going to be able to do it, but I knew I was going to do it. And I do wonder whether those really bad times have led us to where we are today. And it really is a lovely life.
So, what is her life like now after accumulating the properties in her portfolio?
It was so cool. Well, obviously, sold the business in 2000, sold the DJ business for equipment value about 2008. Bought this house in 2009 that we split into two to make a positive year. So that's positive geared by about a couple $100 a week. So that's $10,000 a year we didn't have. And then I remember I wanted to give my kids a country life because I was born in Pinaroo. My older brothers had the opportunity to live a bit of country life because they're older, and I didn't get it. So I remember thinking I'd love to give my kids some country life. So we were hoping to perhaps be able to run one of these resorts around Australia and put the kids into a country school and do the whole thing. And I remember saying to Andy, if we don't get offered anything by December 2009, let's buy a caravan, because I knew we were on a time frame because the kids are getting older. Let's buy a caravan and travel Australia. We'll give them country life that way. And that's what we did. We weren't offered anything by December 2009, so January 2010, bought a caravan and off we went, rented our house out. I think we're getting $500 a week for that, so that pretty much paid for our fuel. And we just stopped on the side of roads. We always ate in the caravan, so the food bill was pretty much the same as what it would be if we're home. And we certainly didn't stay in caravan parks because 18 months, 2 years on the road does not allow you to pay for that sort of cost. And a lot of the places we went were wineries, so we'd go to a winery, buy a bottle of wine, take our own cheese and bickies and sit out in the grass and the kids would play. It was simple. It was really simple. So that was amazing.
From there, she managed to leapfrog and buy more properties from the equity she created as well. However, she has her reasons for not investing in other states of Australia.
Yeah, just sort of came up to, as in bought 5 more properties since we've been back, and we're just trying to find our feet. I never intended to be a property manager, but it's actually perfect because I can see how people are building their portfolio. We've got 2 or 3 of our owners knocking down a house and building 4 townhouses, and we've got others that are renovating it to make it better. And I go, it's just really exciting because I love watching other people make money too. And it really is a great form because unlike my parents that had the cash, so they've obviously sold up all their properties and put it into shares. When you're trying to build a portfolio, when you're trying to build wealth, to do it in shares is tough because you almost need the cash. So, and whereas you can borrow 80% of the property, in fact, in my case, it's 110% because I'm using the 30%, which is 20% deposit and the 10% in costs, say, stamp duty, etc., is coming out of equity. So each property has to be returning the loan of 110% before it becomes positive for me. And it's ironic because our capital growth has actually been quite slow in the last 5 years, but we're manufacturing growth by doing things. So whether it be renovating, whether it be splitting houses into 2, whether it be a block of units into 4 titles, that's really where the money's kicked in. The capital growth has really happened well in our own home, but we've had that for 17, 18 years. All the others have been a lot slower. And we've made more money since the GFC than we did before. So a lot of people say, it's not the right time, but it's really interesting. It is good to work against the sheep, do things that other people aren't. So right now, if things were a bit quiet out there and you go, oh no, it's a bad time to buy, that to me is actually the right time to buy because you'll get really good bargains. In Adelaide, we are a completely different market and some people just don't. And, land tax is a state tax. So it's a great idea to, spread your risk. And you start from zero again for land tax. So that was that's why I don't own all in South Australia is because of land tax. We've got a chunk of properties in Victoria and obviously a bulk of them in South Australia, and they're in different names and titles and things as well. So that helps with land tax and things. It certainly keeps ours to a minimum. We don't actually pay a great deal of land tax. You'd be quite surprised. So quite happy there. Thankfully, the land tax rules all changed about 2008, where you couldn't have a minority. So at that stage, we were buying things in 99% a trust, a family trust, and 1% Andy or 1% Prue or 1% a business or 1% the combined of us. So we were able to sort of spread it around, and then suddenly the Australian government decided, no, that's not going to be how it is. We're going to, anyone with a minority suddenly gets added to the majority. So it's the same. So it ended up being that the entities were exactly the same. So thankfully it was at the time where we were building our portfolio. So I suddenly changed my strategy again.
If you would like to learn more from her or get in contact about managing your property portfolio, then
probably the easiest way is to just muirheadpropertymanagement.com.au, our website. My email, my phone number's on there, and my life are all on those pages, because obviously I do write. I'm interviewed a bit with Your Investment Property and Australian Property Investor magazines, and it's ironic, I've been on Today Tonight a couple of times in Adelaide, so they're all on there too. So if people want to see my life in full, it's pretty much all over the pages on Muirhead Property Management, as well as all my contact details.
thank you to Prue Muirhead, our guest on this episode of Property Investory. If you want to learn more about her journey, then visit our website at propertyinvestory.com. Simply type in the search bar Prue Muirhead and select that episode to learn more about her story. Also, if you haven't subscribed to receive your free property case studies that I only send out exclusively via email, then you can text me your email address to 04 99 88 10 40 to subscribe. These real case studies are from experienced property investors where they share specific numbers of their portfolio, their strategies, and much more. Simply text me your email address to 04 99 88 10 40 to get your free case studies. If you love the show, perhaps you're now ready to invest your money in a low-risk, high-return deal. If you are, then SMS me your name and email address on 04 99 88 10 40 to become a lender. There are amazing opportunities in the property market right now, and I'm looking for lenders who want to invest their money for as short as 6 months. What are you waiting for? Don't let your money just sit in the bank. To register your interest, text me your name and email address on 04 99 88 10 40.